Discretion is advised.
Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was play with you. Please come and play with me. I am so lonely. You're not afraid of the dark, are you? Don't be afraid. Come with me.
At first glance, Robert the doll appears to be an unassuming, much-loved toy. He looks distinctively homemade with a fabric face that is worn with time. But his eyes are made of hard, tiny beads of black, and his sailor suit, while pressed and clean, is shiny white that once belonged to his now-deceased owner. On his lifeless lap sits a disturbing-looking toy pooch with big bulging eyes and a long tongue that hangs maniacally out of its mouth. But if you take a second look, Robert the doll isn't so innocent. Legend has it that the 116-year-old straw doll is haunted by an evil spirit. His original owner, a boy named Robert Eugene Otto, used to blame his mishaps on the doll, until the mischief became more sinister. It is said that Robert the doll wreaks havoc on people's lives. The doll has caused car accidents, broken bones, job loss, divorce, and a cornucopia of other misfortunes. Even today, misfortune allegedly befalls those who insult him. This is the haunted story of Robert the doll. There's a bit of debate surrounding Robert's origins. Some claim that he was gifted to his late owner Robert Eugene Otto from his grandfather in 1904. But locals recall a more sinister backstory. They claim that the straw-filled toy was given to the young Otto by one of the family's young maids, who hexed it in retaliation for some wrongdoing. Officials at the Fort West Martello Museum, where Robert resides today, deduced that the doll was actually never intended to be a doll in the first place. Robert's origins are traced back to the Steve Company, the same toy company that designed the very first teddy bear, where a company historian told the museum that the doll was most likely meant to be part of a window display. Nonetheless, Robert was taken in by the Otto family and became little Gene Otto's best friend. Robert the doll is made of fabric and straw, but that didn't matter to the young Otto, who was so enamored with it that he named the doll after himself. He clothed it in his very own clothes. Despite the toy's awkwardly large size, he carried it with him wherever he went. Otto was so close to his new friend that his parents would often hear him whispering to it. This seemed totally normal, until one day they heard a deep voice answering back. Robert the doll was listening. What people really remember is that what they would probably term as an unhealthy relationship with the doll, he talked about it in the first person as if he weren't a doll. He was Robert, as in he is a living entity. Soon, however, strange things began to happen around the Otto household. According to legend, Otto's parents would wake up in the middle of the night, only to find their poor boy screaming and surrounded by overturned furniture. As Robert Eugene Otto grew older, Robert became more malicious as mutilated toys started appearing in the Otto home, and young Otto would cry, "Robert did it." Once, a plumber who had been hired to make repairs around Otto's home claimed to hear children's laughter, though no one was home at the time. When he looked around the room, the plumber noticed that Robert the doll had moved from one side of the window to the other, seemingly on his own. What's more, the plumber swore that object that had been in Robert's lap ended up on the other side of the room, as if he had thrown them. Staff members in the house reported seeing the doll speak and witnessing his expressions change. Giggling and sightings of Robert running up the steps or staring out the upstairs window were also reported. Eventually, Otto grew up and moved away. After studying at the Academy of Fine Arts in Chicago and the Art Students League in New York, Gene Otto went to the Parisian Sorbonne, where he met his wife Anne. Otto brought the doll back to his childhood home at 534 Eaton Street in Key West, Florida, and he called the home the Artist House. His wife Anne felt uneasy around Robert in the house, and although she couldn't put her finger on it, she wanted Gene to lock the doll up in the attic, where he could do no harm. Otto designed a special room for Robert in the attic, complete with furniture, toys, and even a teddy bear of Robert's own. But Otto's wife was not keen on his childhood toy and requested that he keep the doll locked up. Robert was allegedly not fond of this. He is said to have repeatedly weaseled his way out and situated himself in a chair facing out of the upstairs window, where he could see the passers-by below. People who passed 534 Eaton Street soon avoided walking near the house altogether. Soon visitors to the home heard footsteps in the attic and the sounds of someone pacing back and forth. Neighborhood children reported seeing Robert watching them from the window in the upstairs bedroom and told accounts of the doll actually mocking them as they walked to school. When Gene heard this, he immediately went to investigate, knowing that he had locked Robert in the attic and there was no way he could be sitting by the window of the upstairs bedroom. But to his complete shock, when he opened the door bedroom, there was Robert, sitting in the rocking chair by the window. Gene locked Robert back up in the attic several times, each time discovering him again sitting by the window in the same upstairs bedroom. Locals swore that the doll would disappear and then reappear. facing another direction, or that his gaze would follow him as they passed by. After Robert Eugene Otto died in 1974, a woman named Myrtle Reuter purchased the artist's house, which meant Robert the doll had a brand new caretaker. Reuter lived with Robert for 20 years. It's said she even took him with her when she moved to a new home in the 1980s. Finally, she donated the creepy toy to the Fort East Motel Museum in 1994, claiming that the doll was indeed haunted. The museum accepted the doll and its baggage, assuming Reuter's claims were, of course, nonsense. Almost immediately, however, museum employees reported their own inexplicable happenings with the doll. Staff members reported that Robert's facial expression would change before their very eyes, and hear demonic giggling. They even seen Robert put his hand up to the glass. Nonetheless, numerous visitors have lined up to see Robert the doll on display. Even stranger, fans and fearful believers send letters directly to Robert, sometimes praying to him, sometimes apologizing for having looked at him the wrong way while visiting the museum. He gets probably 1 to 3 letters every day, said Convertito. Some visitors write to ask Robert for advice or if he could place a curse on people who have wronged them. Robert the doll to this day continues to haunt and scare those who come to view him, especially guests of the museum who attempt to take photos. Many have reported their cameras have become inoperable when they try to take a picture of Robert, only to begin working again when they left the museum. Robert the doll now sits in a glass case, but that still doesn't seem to stop him from inflicting fear and discomfort to museum staff and visitors. And to this day, the museum encourages visitors to try and take a photo of Robert. Almost everyone who tries is unsuccessful. If nothing else, get a close look at Robert the doll as possible, and watch him carefully. Maybe you'll catch a glimpse of him smirking at you, or even moving about in his case, or watching you as you watch him. But even when you look at his picture, and you look deep into his eyes, you can tell he's looking at you.
Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was play with you. Please come and play with me. I'm so lonely. You're not afraid of the dark, are you? Don't be afraid. Come with me.
Welcome to my channel. This is Mr. Scary. Hope you enjoy the show.